The Public Health, Care, and Human Services Committee will come to order. Mr. DeNovalis, I thought I had it right. Mr. DeNovalis will call the roll, please.
Representatives Conti.
Excused.
Everett.
Here.
Joshi.
Here.
Landgraf.
Here.
May.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Singer.
Here.
Stevens.
Excused.
Tyler.
Present.
Wilson.
Here.
Duran.
Here.
Primavera.
Excused.
Madam Chair.
Here. And members of the audience, I am chairing the committee until Representative Primavera returns. She's presenting a bill in another committee, so she will be coming back because she is the chair of the committee. But our first presentation today is a presentation by the Brain Injury Alliance. If you would come up, please, and introduce yourselves and let us know about the Brain Injury Alliance.
Thank you, Representative McCann and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today about brain injury in the state of Colorado. My name is Gavin Attwood, and I'm the Executive Director of the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado, or BIAC, and I'm joined by my colleague Mark Condon, who is our Resource Navigator. The Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado is the only statewide nonprofit exclusively dedicated to brain injury. Our mission is to improve the quality of life for people with brain injuries by connecting survivors with resources to help navigate the path of rehabilitation. There are approximately 100,000 Coloradans living with the effects of a brain injury. There are 5,000 new injuries requiring an overnight stay that occur every year in Colorado. Many injuries, particularly concussions, are not reported. And lastly, a brain injury occurs in the United States every 23 seconds. Depending on the severity of the injury, the symptoms can range from difficulty concentrating to short-term memory loss to requiring 24-hour care. The injury is called the silent epidemic because often it can't be seen, like a broken arm, amputation, or severe burn. Brain injury is also the signature injury of the recent wars. Now, BIAC has an active public policy agenda that includes the prevention of brain injuries. We are a very active stakeholder in the implementation of the Affordable Health Care Act and the exchange in the state. We are working to increase revenues to the Colorado TBI Trust Fund, and we're working closely with Healthcare Policy and Finance, HCPF, to remove barriers to access to services under the Medicaid brain injury waiver. At this point, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mark Condon. Mark has been the Resource Navigator at BIAC for over 10 years. Mark works with survivors of a brain injury who have particularly complex needs. And as a survivor of a brain injury himself, he is able to help them with incredible compassion and empathy. Thank you, Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark John Condon, and I had a severe traumatic brain injury 32 years ago. Sometimes it's hard for me to talk. I hope you can understand me. At first, people could not understand me at all. Then for a while, I talked something like this. But today, I can talk like this. I used to walk much worse than I talked, but I can walk closer to normal now. I wanted to let you hear how hard it was for me to talk, and if I could, I'd show you how hard it was for me to walk, because you can't see most brain injury disabilities, and you can't see the disabilities I'm still dealing with, but they're ever present. Just what happened to me. How did I get brain injured? According to the police report, on evening of March 7th, 1981, a couple of blocks in front of the State Capitol building in downtown Lansing, Michigan, a drunk driver in a pickup truck ran the red light going approximately 50 miles per hour and crashed into the side of my car. My head was smashed into the passenger side dashboard, and I suffered extensive brain damage. The stick shift broke 6 ribs as it ripped open my chest, collapsed my lung, and I'd stopped breathing. If my breathing had not been resuscitated in 10 minutes, I would have been completely dead. I say completely, for much of me I already was dead with the massive brain damage. My car was plowed into the parking lot, and I was thrown under the passenger dashboard and crushed in around me. That certainly would have been the end of me had not Providence manifested itself. There's an ambulance between calls at the very same intersection, waiting
Take your time. It's fine.
Waiting for the next green light. The paramedics saw the ambulance crash right in front of them, and they saved my life. That's when I became a survivor. I was in a coma for 32 days and remained semi-conscious for another month. At least that's what the hospital report says. I have retrograde amnesia. I can't remember the months after the accident. I also have anterograde amnesia. I can't remember the months before my brain injury. While I was in a coma, they performed brain surgery, and my intracranial pressure was beyond what normally kills people. And they did a tracheotomy. When I was on that, I got 2 strains of critical pneumonia, both resistant to antibiotics. Between the lethal pneumonia while on a tracheotomy and the severe brain injury, it seemed certain I wouldn't live through it. When I survived, the unprepared doctors, who fully expected I would die, told my family the inevitable. My brain injury was so severe I'd be institutionalized for life. I've not been in any institution, but I have been through nearly, just a second.
Take your time. We've got all afternoon.
Okay. Nearly every form of rehabilitation recommended for brain injury. I had to learn to walk. My left foot was inverted and drooped down from the heel. The toes hit the ground before the heel, dragging the floor instead of picking up, and the left knee would hyperextend backwards in a snap-like fashion before my next step. I had to think about every aspect of my step with each step. And I felt like a freak because even with my greatest effort, I was unable to correct my gait. All I could do was try to compensate for it, and I could barely do that. I also had to learn to speak intelligibly. I would say something, and my sister Kathy, who's a registered nurse, would ask me what I said. I knew what I said, so I'd repeat myself, and she'd ask me what I said again. And I'd say very slow, but I wouldn't pronounce the consonants properly enough to lose the ends of words. My family became so useless that they began to understand me. Still, they insisted I repeat my words until I spoke them more clearly. I would get frustrated. At times, this frustration was expressed as anger toward my sister, who I typically singled out. Thankfully, my sister and my whole family, my circle of support, didn't give up on me. In addition to that, I had to learn to maintain personal hygiene, how to groom and dress myself, how to organize and clean my bedroom, and remember where I put things, and on and on. The things like that, the activities of daily living, are what I call the tangibles. Now, the tangibles are a lot of hard work when you're severely brain injured, but they're nothing compared to the intangibles. The intangibles, the elusive, vague aspects of life, are the thousands of relational, social, and executive skills I learned over the 22 years before my accident. Skills such as how to be with other people without embarrassing or offending them, how to be true to myself and my values, how to appropriately reciprocate a favor given, what the comfortable personal distance exchanges in public encounters, and how to make decisions in different contexts. And on and on. Years later, the intangibles take on a different form, such as how to maintain business correspondence, how to consistently be on time for vocational commitments, how to initiate and monitor work and recreational activities, but they're just as elusive, just as difficult as the other intangibles. And it was doubly hard for me to get a handle on the intangibles because my thoughts were no longer consistent. I didn't know what to do about the intangibles. That made it all the more difficult to focus on the hours and hours of tangible therapies. It's like this. It was tough at first when I couldn't tie my shoes, but everyone understood that, and they were patient as I relearned that tangible skill. Later on, no one, including myself, understood why I couldn't consistently open my mail or get to work on time. And everyone quickly loses their patience when you're struggling to reestablish such intangible skills as that. As my self-awareness began to resurface, it felt as though I was in prison because I could do some things, but not everything. People could not see my prison bars. I wasn't an amputee. I was not in a wheelchair. They couldn't see that I was severely disabled. I wanted everyone to see my tracheotomy scars, my brain surgery scars, because I thought that would help explain things. However, my scars were not obvious. If I wasn't walking or talking, no one could tell there was anything wrong with me. What was wrong was my damaged brain, not me. But how could I understand this? How can my family and friends understand this? How can people separate
all right.
How could they separate my physically damaged brain from me? It had to be me that was wrong. Wasn't it me who gets stuck in procrastination? Wasn't it me who was socially inappropriate? You know, it was me who wouldn't tell the whole truth. In order... in order to defend myself in a relational conflict. When you have a broken leg, what do your friends say? They say, I hope your leg gets better soon. When you have a damaged brain, they don't say, I hope your brain gets better soon. It's you that they want to get better. I'll need 2 of these. Thanks. It got to the point that I wish that I had not lived through my accident. I wish I was dead. And I thought for everyone's sake I'd be better off dead. And for years I was haunted by the thought of ending my life because I didn't think I had a right to live any longer. Until after I'd lived with my disability for 10 years, I did not or could not really grieve my loss, and that's the reason why I didn't accept the new me. However, becoming aware of the limits I experienced because of my brain damage, I've grown to better accept these limits and to accommodate them. After more than 30 years of rehabilitating, I'm again able to respect myself. In the early years, post-brain injury, I was only a chimera, a ghost of my former self, and that I was not all there. With my determined persistence, my support circle's help, by God's grace, I gradually fleshed out who I am today. I graduated with the Rehabilitation Counseling Master's degree 17 years after my brain injury. A year later, I passed the National Licensed Professional Counselor exam. Then I continued my graduate studies to become a certified school counselor. Today, I work for the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado as a resource navigator and support group leader. I work part-time for the District Attorney of Denver and part-time for my own company, Transforming Techniques Incorporated. Now, if you're trying to put yourself in a survivor's shoes, I appreciate that. If you're trying to imagine what it feels like to be me at any point in my life post-injury, it's difficult. But if you're trying, you're probably thinking how you would adjust or cope to compensate to a brain injury. But after a moderate or severe brain injury, you can't think like that because you're off your mark. It's no longer your normal self who's present to cope or compensate. Your I is gone, your sense of self is gone, and you're painted with this mysterious otherness. You are you, but not the same you. How could anyone comprehend what it's like not to be able to feel your feelings? What does that feel like? Well, that feeling or non-feeling has to be communicated in a language no one speaks, a language that no one understands, and that's one of the reasons why the brain injury epidemic remains ineffable, silent. To better help you appreciate what it can be like to live life after brain injury, please let me use an illustration. We've all heard the expression that someone's not playing with a full deck, or he's a few cards short of a full deck when referring to someone who's slow or stupid in some ways, right? Right. After a severe brain injury, you do lose cards, neurological cards, and you're going to be slower on most everything. You won't be stupid necessarily, but you have to live the rest of your life with blind spots. The neurological cards that you lost become your blind spots. Let these cards I've blackened out represent your blind spots. Okay, these are your blind spots. Now, what's it like to live life with neuropathological blind spots? If life can be compared to driving a car, take these blind spots and put them over 1/3 of all of your rearview mirrors and 1/3 of your windshield, then go for a drive. You can see clearly out of 2/3 of your rearview mirrors and 2/3 out of the front windshield and out of all the other windows. So at first, when you're backing out of your driveway or maybe even driving around the block, you'll look fine, you'll do okay. But as soon as you get out in the traffic of real life, you're bound to have a crash or an accident, right? With a brain injury, you're bound to have a relational vocational conflict, to offend someone, to say something you did not want to say, to forget a work procedure, to forget an event or commitment again and again. You're going to burn food on the stove, you're going to overflow the sink, you're not going to take your medicine occasionally or repeatedly. However, because people can't see your blind spots, they're going to, and you look fine, you look normal driving around the block, so to speak. They're going to, when you get out there in public life and crash, they're not going to understand why. They're not going to. They'll just ask you, why'd you do that? Either you won't know why, or you don't want to admit your disabilities. It can take a long time to really realize and accept the disabilities from a brain injury, in which you may never figure out how to best compensate for. Brain injury can drop you in the middle of the worst quagmire in your life, And no one knows how to get you out of it. No one, not even the doctors. And you're probably going to feel like your life should be over as well. And yeah, some brain injury survivors have to drive through life with, half of their rear view mirrors and half of their windshield blocked out. There's over 100,000 people in Colorado doing that right now. And even the survivors of mild brain injuries, who seem the most normal, have to live life a few cards short of a full deck, and that's not easy. Please keep this in mind when you're legislating public policy regarding brain injury survivors, me and the other ones in Colorado. I really appreciate Representative Primavera inviting me to speak, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You speak very well. Understood everything you said. So you obviously have made huge progress, and we admire you for coming forward and sharing such a personal struggle, but a triumph. Sounds like you're
sometime
doing well.
I'm going to get through without breaking down, but each time I tell the story, I get choked up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's an amazing story of persistence and survival. So we appreciate that.
If I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to.
Are there any questions? Representative Schaefer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry I didn't get this witness's last name. Mr. Condon. What are the causes of brain injuries? You mentioned concussion. Are there any other common causes?
It breaks down percentage-wise. I think there's 17% falls.
Falls.
There's
60% motor vehicle.
Yeah, 6% motor vehicle. Then there's so many percent sports injuries. Mm-hmm. But the common victims now are older people falling and hitting their heads, or children falling, and then kids playing. And, in a certain age frame, you're more susceptible to a brain injury. One, because kids are on bicycles riding around without helmets. That's a common thing. Or sports activities with soccer and football and the other sports too. There's head injuries there. And then the wars got a huge percentage of the disabilities from these recent wars are the brain injuries and from IUDs and stuff like that. And I don't have the percentages memorized yet, but
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Representative Primavera has joined us, and we just had an amazing presentation from Mr. Condon about his recovery from traumatic brain injury. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, part of the reason that he's here today is I heard him at the Brain Injury Alliance breakfast, and I was very moved by your presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Primavera.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Condon?
Or Gavin.
Or, for either witness.
It's all you, Mark.
Mr. Attwood, anything further?
If I could just wrap up a couple of comments. For the past 2.5 years, we've been working with HCPF, which is, as you know, the agency that manages the waiver, the brain injury waiver, to try and make some necessary improvements. And we certainly appreciate the efforts that HCPF staff has made to begin to break down these barriers, but we all recognize that there's much more work that needs to be done. In general, the issues with the waiver include frustrations about how slow the process is because of various bureaucratic hoops that we have to jump through. There are also barriers to entry that don't seem to make sense. For example, there's a wait list for services and providers that have open beds, but there's a lack of guidelines for the certification of additional beds. There's a lack of guidelines for the transitional program and also the brain injury day program. As Mark's story demonstrates, brain injuries are often caused by very traumatic events. Individuals and families are overwhelmed at the beginning. Some of the problems are in state rules, and we've fixed a few of those. Some require CMS approval, and we're currently working on resolving some, but not all of those. Because of these problems, the waiver has never been fully utilized. We have had 500 slots available, but only about 300 are being used at any given point in time. And because we were not able to make progress on reducing the barriers, CMS recently forced the state to reduce the number of slots available under the BI waiver. This is concerning to members of our community, as the underutilization does not reflect a lack of demand or a need for services. But we look forward to continuing our efforts with HCPF and welcome the support of members of this committee as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Representative Tyler had a question.
Thank you. Not a question, but a comment. I want to talk a little bit about a client of BIA named Sean. And Sean was at a program at the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. My son, for various reasons, needed to do some community service. And he spent a week at BIA, at BOEC, for a program there. And his buddy was his biggest fear, was a gentleman who was quadriplegic. And it was his job to spend a week with him and take care of him in every way he could. Ropes courses, climbing walls, baths and bathroom, the whole thing. That changed my son's life totally. It changed the direction of his life and what he was doing. The next year he went back for 2 weeks to be an aide. The year after that, he spent the whole summer there, and with a lot of people with high degrees, because it's an extremely competitive program to be at BOEC and help these people. And then he worked for them full time for a while. And I will tell you that the experience of working with Sean and a number of the other clients of BIA at the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center, it literally changed the direction of my son's life for the better, and he's still going down that road. And it's, so both the people who are clients and the people who are their buddies, it has a tremendous impact on their lives and a tremendous positive force for good in the state of Colorado. And I really commend the work BIA does and everything you two do to move it forward.
Thank you. Representative Joshi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for both your presentations. I also was at your breakfast, and I heard your story first time over there, and I'm so glad the progress you have made. And Mr. Attwood, also all the work you do for the Alliance and anything we can do to help your cause, we all are here for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Representative Landgraf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation, especially your presentation. A couple comments. One is that I know from experience how a similar brain injury can affect people very differently. And so one person would have one set of hurdles, your hurdles. Another person could have very different hurdles, but they're all still very serious. But what I wanted to ask is if you could, or either one of you could explain a little bit about the different types of waivers.
There are, and I probably have to get back about some real technical details on some of these, but basically there are 12 waivers in the state of Colorado. There was one recently added, a spinal cord waiver. And the waivers are for people that have qualified for Medicaid, and the waivers, if they then qualify also for the waivers, they get more services specific to whatever disability is they have. So obviously the one that we focus in on is brain injury waiver. There's a DD waiver. There's a elderly, blind, and disabled waiver. I can't rattle off all 12 of them. There's a spinal waiver. But basically there are additional services over and above what you get as a recipient of Medicaid.
Representative Landgraf, did you want to
Thank you,
follow
Madam
up?
Chair. Is there any reason these couldn't be combined under one waiver?
They're actually,
Attwood.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
There actually are a couple of committees that I sit on currently that have been appointed by the governor to look at exactly that waiver modernization. So there isn't an end answer, but there is work being done to see whether or not there couldn't be some streamlining of services under the waivers.
Thank you.
Representative Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, you spoke of driving a car with a third of the windshield and a third of the rear windshield blackened out and having to deal with that and go through life. Is this a condition that ever improves, and can it improve, or is this going to be a permanent status that you have to learn to cope with?
Well, according to the ADA, or AMA, American Medical Association, they say that people plateau 2 years after their brain injury, and basically insurance companies take that and they cut off your benefits after 2 years. I made some of my best improvements 15 and 20 years plus after my injury, and that's because I got involved with certain therapists and certain modalities that weren't really well known that helped me a lot. And so, other neurologists that I really respect, and they're very, very smart men, they believe that the brain can continue to recover and heal indefinitely. But still, there's a threshold that I'm never going to be able to be the rugby player I was, you know, and not that I want to be, but there's some things that I'll never be able to do. But there's something right now I can do more things than some average Joes can do, you know, because I work at it so hard. But certain things like my core balance and stuff, it's like the proprioception, you know, it's hard for me to regain. But you can continue, and I plan on keeping get better. I'm not going to quit.
Good for you. Okay. Seeing no further questions, I assume you and your sister still get along, even though you were taking it out on her. Like,
well, my close family, the hospital even commented how close we were, and they also say that that's one of the key ingredients for recovering from brain injury is a family network, how close they are, because a lot of people get disowned by their families because they don't know how to handle it or whatever. But my family's real tight. Thanks.
Yes, well, I'm glad that they stuck with you because you seem to be doing really well. So thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate your input. We'll shuffle around here a little bit.